Hello, my name is Amie Webster, and I'm here today. I wanted to chat about avoiding the practicing blues. And what qualifies me to talk about this? Probably the biggest one is that I have had such a varied practice experience over my years of music making. I'm also an ARCT piano teacher and educator for many years, and now a mom of three small boys under the age of 7. So it's been an interesting journey, and I think my greatest success will be if I keep exploring music for many, many years to come. And if the students that I work with come away with great musical foundations and also find their way through learning and learn how to persevere in music making when it's not easy to learn something new. So today I had a lot of fun putting this together. It was something that sparked an interest in me because of the brain science behind practicing. And I think for parents especially, or adults taking music, this will give you just some new insights about how the brain works when you are practicing music. And it gives a new kind of empathy, but also a great excitement about the health and the brain health and benefits that come from studying music of any kind. So my background is piano, and I love teaching it. I love the challenge of exploring music alongside students. And my husband and I, Jeff Webster, we also have had the extreme privilege of working alongside many educators in our 11 years of owning Motif Music Studios and being inspired by the staff that we work with there. So that's my background, and I hope that this will be fun and helpful for you. I brought my coffee along, and I'll see if I can proceed without too many interruptions and enjoy a peaceful Sunday morning with you. So the first is today we're going to chat about three main topics. We're going to talk about why music and why is learning music so tough at times. Also communication at the end. It's your lifeline. What's important about it with yourself, with communicating with your teacher, and communicating with your child. Also, we're going to be talking about practice tips and strategies for students and parents. Although I geared this workshop initially as a parent workshop, as parents working with their children, when I was reading it again, I thought, oh man, this applies so much for adults taking music as well. So I think that you'll find the parallel there. So firstly, let's list some of the benefits of music. I have notes here today. So the benefits that come to mind for musically, socially, and developmentally are the ability to read and understand music. It sounds basic, but really it opens up a world that is international. It doesn't matter what country, what culture. Music is a shared language. And so entering into the world of music gives you a way to communicate with others. And I think that that's a fantastic benefit. For young students, it reinforces left to right reading. The language formation and the rhythm of words and the rhythm of music, it all blends together beautifully and gives great brain development from there. We're going to be talking more about those things more scientifically, but music stimulates both sides of the brain at once and promotes more connections between the hemispheres of the brain. And that, I am no neuroscientist, but there's many, many resources on that and the benefits of it. It can instill confidence in as students learn to share their music with others. So sharing music doesn't always look like participating in a recital or being a recording artist. I think that as an educator and working alongside a team, one of the heart for me in music is that people can use music in the way that serves them best. it's for some, it's just a safe place to be in music and exploring music on their own. Maybe it never gets shared outside the walls of your home, but it still can be a beautiful thing. But for others, it can instill confidence to take small risks and to share something that brings joy to other people. So I think that there's so much room in music for that. It can give students a special skill that they can have in common with others. So it can build bridges to connect with people outside of your regular group because you have something shared that's in common. It can also be a special skill that they have. Some of my students loved having a secret skill that people sometimes wouldn't even know, that, oh, you play the piano? Wow, that's so fun and unique. And so I think it can give that kind of confidence with that. It also develops character, and I know this for myself. Learning music was something that was varied for me. It didn't start off really young. I started as an older beginner and just kind of did it very casually for many years. And so my practicing was also very sporadic. I was a passion-based practicer. So when I got very enthused with something, there was nothing that could stop me. I'd spend hours and hours and hours, but then I'd have kind of those drier times where I wasn't as drawn to practicing daily. Later in my studies, when I started teaching, one of my biggest things is I was like, I don't want to start teaching and then not learn anymore. So I, in my 20s, decided that I was going to get my ARCT. And it wasn't easy for me. I was teaching a lot by that time, and I had years of kind of having to develop the skill of technique and confidence performing, things that you have to do when you're getting a more focused degree. So it was a challenge, but it brought about a new level of character development. So determination, dedication, patience, time management skills, goal setting, and the ability to respond to coaching and suggestions for improvement. And so as now a mom, I see how those character qualities are so essential in so many areas of life. You're going to be needing those things of just like digging in when something's hard, or getting creative when you think, oh, this is an obstacle that I'm facing. How can I creatively kind of coach myself through this? Because I think as a piano teacher and as a music educator of any kind of music, we see students for such a limited time each week. We used our studio originally was in this vibrant little arts community, and we would look over at the dancers with a wee bit of jealousy because they would see some of their students 15 to 20 hours a week. And for music teachers, it's more common to see your student for half an hour to 1 hour per week. And so that meant that in that time, we had to somehow instill tools for self-coaching the rest of the week and hope that parents would come alongside with kind of encouragement. And we had to, somehow hone the pieces and yet not just have it all problem solving and inspire. It was a big ask. It still is. So that's an obstacle, but it does create a neat emotional and mental challenge to become a musician. So that's some of the benefits of music and the things that come from it. Why is music learning so tough? And I don't mean to say it's always tough. There's definitely times when students just sit down at the piano or start drumming away or playing a stringed instrument or singing, and it comes easily and naturally. There's always those times. But at the same point, in order to hone anything, there is a level of challenge that comes with learning music that students may not even encounter in any other way. So learning an instrument requires consistency. We'll go into that in greater detail, but it does require consistency. It can require alone time, which for some students, that's this beautiful, safe place that they can just come away from the world and the hustle and bustle of life and retreat. But for others, I was very social, still am. So sometimes learning an instrument on my own that was a solo instrument meant I couldn't be chat someone's ear off. So it took the discipline and focus to be able to just pause, but it was so good for me and still is to take that time and that peacefulness. It can sometimes mean sacrifices. So for young students these days, I think it's getting even more difficult. It might mean they're sacrificing free time or screen time. That's really hard. Entertainment time, playtime, friend time. And so we live in quite an entertainment-based society. So music can be hard work, which is one of the challenges because it's hard if you're working to improve strategically and follow directions. So that can be a challenge for students. Also, coordination can prove difficult. If you think about multitasking something that's basically requiring you to pat your head and rub your stomach and then switch, it's a big challenge to have rhythm alongside the musicality of a long phrase or beautiful music expression, along with reading notes is a new language for many. So even for a dedicated, disciplined musician, actual practice and improvement takes time and determination. So when my next note was why music takes practice, and I already kind of dove into that before my notes, so I think we've talked about that. So when we have our half-hour to 1-hour lesson per week, we leave the students on their own with their craft for another 79 to 79.5 waking hours per week. And those waking hours have a lot of competition for that time, including school and extracurricular and sports. So this is a unique challenge for parents and students to be able to use that information they learned in lessons and be able to see progress each week between lessons. So my personal goal, as well as our goal as an educational school, has been to give you tools as a parent or the grown-up helping a younger child, or as just learning for your own benefit, is that you are given tools to help facilitate positive, consistent practices, and that you'll be able to work together to give your child a renewed enthusiasm for music. So a fantastic quote that speaks truth is, learning about music or learning to play an instrument does not happen without commitment and involvement on part of both the parent and child. Development depends on continuity and dedication. It's cumulative effort that leads to success, not intermittent moments of enthusiasm or occasional bursts of energy. I've cited the source for this in my notes that I'll include below. So I loved that one. It was kind of funny to me because my practice style is definitely moments of enthusiasm and bursts of energy. So you do have to work with your own learning style. I know for me, I started to be able to hone that as a strength and a weakness, and I would set timers for myself that were small bursts of time that I would try to immensely focus on one particular aspect of a song or a technique element, and that was really beneficial for me, knowing that that was my style. An incredible book is called The Brain That Changes Itself. It's by Norman Doidge, a medical doctor. And on page 291, again, I'll cite sources in a screen slideshow presentation that I will link in this video. But he says, music makes extraordinary demands on the brain. A pianist performing the 11th variation of the 6th Paganini etude by Franz Liszt must play a staggering 1,800 notes per minute. Studies by Taub and others of musicians who play stringed instruments have shown that the more these musicians practice, the larger the brain maps for their active left hands become, and the neurons and maps that respond to the string timbres increase. In trumpeters, the neurons and maps that respond to brassy sounds enlarge. Brain imaging shows that musicians have several areas of their brains: the motor cortex and the cerebellum, among others that differ from those of non-musicians. Imaging also shows that the musicians who begin playing before the age of 7 have larger brain areas connecting the two hemispheres. So when I hear that, I think, wow, no wonder it's hard work. You are actually changing the connections and size and development of your brain in a way that can last your whole life. Music learning doesn't expire, and people can learn music at any age. So Deutsch, that was quoted previously, goes on to say, maintaining improvement and making a skill permanent requires the slow, steady work that probably forms new connections. If a learner thinks he is making no cumulative progress or feels his mind is like a sieve, he needs to keep at the skill. This steady work can take days, weeks, months, or years, depending on the difficulty of the skill. So, this is probably why some people, the tortoises, who seem slow to pick up a skill, may nevertheless learn it better than their hare friends, the quick studies who won't necessarily hold on to what they have learned without the sustained practice that solidifies learning. This is all quoted from Deutsch's book. So this image definitely made some things clear in my experience. I was always a bit of a hare. My teachers can testify. I'm so thankful for each of them that have been part of my music journey. So they'll smile at this. So I was a bit of a hare and expected things to come easily. I was a terrible crammer, and I truly got impatient in my piano practices, expecting instant results. The turnaround for me came way late when I finally committed to only 1 hour every day when working on my teacher's diploma. That was way under the recommended time for that diploma, but consistent practice led to more success, which encouraged more practice. It wasn't brilliant, but against odds, I completed my degree that year. And this is an important reason to commit to daily practice and quality of practice over minutes of your on a timer. So help your child be creative in their practice. Now, that's not an easy thing. I am now a parent, and I go, oh my goodness, it's quite something to try to creatively nurture the building of a skill in a young child. And it takes so much encouragement and perseverance and a lot of your own time. So something I encourage parents with is connecting with an instrument doesn't have to be monumental amounts of time. So it can be just the questions that come up in the week. Oh, I heard you play that tune. Could you play it for me? You know, engaging on a simple level. You don't have to become their daily coach and correcting mistakes depending on the relationship with the parent and child or caregiver and child. But just an interest, reading teacher notes together and working on things away from the piano. So we'll go through some of those ideas next. So this Norman Deutsch continues and says, understanding the tortoise and hare effect can help us understand what we must do to truly master new skills. After a brief period of practice, as when we cram for a test, it's relatively easy to improve because we've likely strengthened existing synaptic connections. That's a good thing. That's okay. But we quickly forget what we've crammed because these are easy come, easy go neuronal connections and are rapidly reversed. Just checking in with you here. Is there anything you've tried to learn but feel like you're a failure at? I know that we often come up with obstacles, whether it's music or something else, that we feel this is too big. So I've had to review my own opinions about learning and the time I'm willing to offer when approaching a new skill. Parents often want learning music to be fun for their child, and I really believe it can be, so I don't want you to take this wrong. But music does not always feel like fun without progress. So hear me out. I've taught since 1997, and that's a while ago now. Some of the time I wasn't teaching full-time in this last few years with lots of babies and excitement and cheering on our staff at Motif Music Studios. But I've witnessed a lot of what this relationship can look like. So without progress, coming to a lesson, you or your child might actually start to dread it. If at times they feel like they've not been able to move forward from their last lesson, or if they feel overwhelmed by practices, or if they feel like they have to cram everything into one practice to make up for days of no practice. And then, like we're hearing from Norman Deutsch here, we're hearing that those the connections are there, but they're temporary connections. So they might feel like they have it in their fingers, they play it, but when they try to revisit that song, suddenly they're discouraged because guess what? The skill isn't in those permanent connections. It was a temporary connection that needed more time. So success and enjoyment come from increasing abilities, and that comes as a reward of consistency. We all have heard this to be true, but I think there's still an element that we just hope, oh, it can be light, we don't have to revisit it, it can just happen. So music learning is fun. It's very rewarding, but it does take a daily visiting of music. And we'll go into more excitement about the fact that that doesn't always have to happen on your instrument or with even your instrument in your hand. And I think that's important for parents to know as well, because life happens, and sometimes it happens fast, and we don't want to have music learning not happen because families are feeling overwhelmed. So there's still many benefits that can be had in different ways. So the great news is that when we look at tips from teachers and from myself and from educators around the world, practice is more than just playing notes on your instrument. So you can actually teach your child time-saving tips and have fun at the same time. So one of the biggest things that I love to say is that look before you leap. So with practice, some of the biggest value is actually in analyzing the music. And even if you're a non-musician coaching a child who's in music, there's amazing things that you can come up with. So say you're pulling a song out of the binder, or you've looked at your lesson online and you find the song your child's supposed to learn. You can start with simple things like, who's the composer? Asking questions. Oh, hey, let's look them up together. So you're on a car ride and someone in the passenger seat says, hey, let's find some facts about that composer you're playing. Oh, guess what? We found about where they live, or what their culture was, or what their passion was. Those are all extremely valuable when it comes to learning a piece of music. You might want to listen to songs that are also by that same composer, so it can really take you down a path of enjoyment for the whole family. Next, you might look at the title of the piece and go, oh, okay, does it depict a story that I'm supposed to tell? Is the music based on a dance? There's lots of that an adult student or an adult that is caregiving for a child can really draw out and make that exciting. Some of my students are amazingly artistic, and they might actually draw a picture that depicts that title and base their playing on that, and it will bring a new layer of musicality to what they're doing. So we've just covered the composer and the title of the song so far, and there's already so much that you can do to encourage that music learning. Next, you're looking at clues, musical clues, so becoming an amazing detective. So you might firstly look at the notes that your teacher has laid out. So some teachers, everyone has a different style. Some will write very detailed notes. Some will have it more auditory or provide a video to accompany the child's music learning for the week. So whatever the style is, take time to reflect on, oh, did your teacher have anything that you were supposed to work on? Let's investigate that together. That togetherness factor will be probably of more value to your child than anything else. And again, it doesn't have to be long. It can be visiting music, just a visit of music of small incremental amounts of time that build up over time. So you'll be looking for key signatures and maybe composer notes about the tempo or the dynamics in the music. Next, tapping rhythm is incredibly valuable, and your child might even be able to teach you rhythm. If you've never learned rhythm before, it's a great time to learn some of the rhythms, tap them before your child ever puts their hands on the piano or their other instrument. Learning to read music is very dynamic and very challenging, so it's hard to read the notes of an instrument at the same time as learning the rhythm. So sometimes separating those can bring a lot of satisfaction as well as a lot of future success. Naming notes. So if your child's learning to read notes, it's very valuable to, check out the music for patterns. And even an adult who hasn't learned music might note like, oh, this note is reoccurring throughout the song and it's always in the same place. Let's figure out what that note is. Let's find it on your instrument. And then let's try to play it, just that note. So again, looking for patterns, looking for triads, looking for notes. There's a lot of ways that you can dive into that even before you touch your instrument. Sometimes less is more. So in a busy, fast-paced life, instead of a student, adult, or a child playing through a whole song and trying to just like, oh, let's repeat it a bunch of times and hope that somehow it gets better, instead of that, try to divide it into small sections. So sometimes I get my students to divide their piece into 6 sections. You'll hear why. You can do it as more. But if you number your sections from 1 to 6, you can roll a dice and see what section to practice first. And that's a fun way, too, of just kind of creating little spot checks. Later, it's going to change. Once the piece is familiar, we're going to be working on more aspects. But these are ways to start engaging in a different way. Encourage listening more than a certain number of times to play a song. And I think for a long time, educators and parents just kind of got this idea like play it 3 times, play it 3 times. And there's value to repetition, but often what happens is students will practice the wrong thing 3 times or 10 times, and it gets very hard to shift that. So the more that you can focus on the quality of the time or a smaller section with more success, the better. A big thing here, and that's in some other topics I may explore in the future if people are interested, is setting your child up for success when is practicing happen. So make sure that practice doesn't always replace fun with friends, free time, or other easier activities. You'll definitely, kids are very smart, and they will start to realize if practicing means they're missing out on other things that the rest of the family's enjoying while they're just isolated in a room in a basement trying to hammer out some notes. So keep that in mind as well. The next thing is that we already discussed is the whole practice doesn't have to happen in one place. I love to have students moving from station to station. So if you are even an adult student, it can help to just like pull out the rhythm one night and just tap it. You're going to be, coffee in hand and just enjoy one element of your practice. For young students, I've been doing, thanks to colleague Sophie Simard, she actually put together some yoga for my students and for our students at Motif Music Studios. And I was so thrilled because I love waking up the brain to learning by creating breath and stretches that promote a calmer brain. Because often when you're transitioning into music, the students have had a busy, tumultuous day. They're in the middle of a transition, which is a very dynamic time for even adults, but often children are even more loaded by that experience of transition. So creating some calm routines, breathing before you play, stretching your body, those are very valuable and make the time that you spend practicing even more valuable and successful. For an active student, I used to laugh and do jumping jacks between pieces. So for some students, that may upregulate them too fast and might make it hard for them to focus. But other students might love a little brain break, body break, do some push-ups, do some jumping jacks. Let's try that again with fresh eyes. So that's something fine. Or fun. So then we reviewed take time for mental practice. Your time won't be wasted. So Pascal Leon, the professor of neurology at Harvard, using only 2 groups of people that had never played the piano, one group with mental practice only and one group that played the same exercise on the piano, found that both groups learned to play the sequence and both showed similar brain map changes. Remarkably, mental practice alone produced the same physical changes in the motor system as actually playing the piano. Long term, the group did notice that the most improvement was to use both physical and mental preparation. Towards the end of his career, the concert pianist Glenn Gould relied largely on mental practice when preparing himself to record a piece of music. So those are ways or just supportive evidence to the value of taking things into that realm of mental study and analyzing a piece before you leap in. And again, for adults, it's very, very valuable. So it's not just the young student, but for the young student, it may be very necessary as they're still learning things like fine motor control and focus and the ability to read left to right, and they're still learning rhythms. And so I think that that's really, really valuable for a young student. Next up, the value of communication. So I think between the parent and the student, it's so neat to think about some of these things. Why is music important to you as a parent? So think about that. Like, why is it important? Why do we want this to be part of our family? And what are ways that you can model that? Ironically, my husband Jeff and I, both, musicians in different ways. I thought, I had this idea that the kids would just love to hear us play. And they were actually quite overwhelmed by tons of music in the house. So we had to dial it back when they were young. But interestingly, the thing that they connected with the most was that Jeff took on as a brand new beginner learning the cello last year, and I took on learning the drums. They were so excited to see us learn something new that even with parents who both played other instruments, they were more fascinated in us stumbling along, learning a new instrument and seeing our progress than even seeing parents that could be accomplished musicians. So that was really interesting to note and very encouraging for other parents that may not play an instrument yet. So then what are your goals for your child's music experience? So thinking like, okay, what kind of educator do I want to be working with my child? I know I want it to be fun, but what are some ways that I can also help make the learning feel fun because the child is learning and growing in a skill? Then thinking what inspires your child. So we don't always get to learn familiar stuff at first for every instrument, but what are their learning style? How do they learn best? And finding educators that will work towards their strengths in that. Is there a way that you can work together to discuss goals and ways that you can assist in encouraging ways? Another one is, I think one of the main reasons I did this presentation today, and I had actually prepared it many years ago for a workshop that we hosted, was that I wanted families to also feel empathy for the challenges that learning music can present. It's hard as a parent if you feel like, oh my goodness, if they don't show up prepared, it reflects poorly on me as a parent. And I think there's a lot of struggle with that with parents, and I get that, but also just seeing how much work it actually is to train a new skill gives us a new empathy. And so we're not jumping in too fast to go, oh, that's wrong, and you need to correct that. I think it's hard to let that process happen and assist in new ways. And then also embracing the many forms that music learning can take and what practice can look like. So I have loads of ideas on that topic, but things like listening to different composers, listening to the sounds that we hear around us, actually sounds, any kind of sounds actually is musical when you start to listen when you're out in nature, or you start to listen to the kind of cacophony of sounds in a city. There are musical sounds and hints of rhythm in almost everything around us. And then modeling a willingness to learn and change. And I think that that's a great gift that families can give their kids, and something that I keep aspiring to as well. These things aren't easy, I get it, but it's inspiring to know that music doesn't have an expiry date. Whether someone is a baby bouncing to music on a parent's lap or a caregiver's lap, or whether they're retirement age, and beyond, they can still enjoy music. I love that Jeff's grandma is 97 years old right now, and she can still sit down. It's one of the activities she can still do is to play the piano. What a gift that is. So between the last part of communication is between student and teacher, just that ability to have clear goals together, working together to make sure that the learning experience is what you're hoping for. And honest communication, being able to say, oh, we're really struggling. Do you have ideas for us? Or, hey, this is working really well. I'm so thrilled. And then trust. It takes a lot of trust for a student to show up with an educator that's trying to coach them and guide them in ways that is beneficial. And so building that trust does take time. And then between parent and teacher is the last one. So understanding each other's goals and being supportive of each other, finding an educator that can do that is an incredible piece of the puzzle when you're looking to start music learning. And just a willingness to work together to support a child in their learning, or to support an adult in your learning, that you feel supported, and that you have the tools and resources you need. So in closing, I hope that this has given you some tools and inspiration to encourage you in your music journey, or your child in their learning, and just a new appreciation for the value of music. So thank you for your time. I'm going to try to link, I have a slideshow of notes, and I will try to link that below in the description of the video, so that you can maybe review some of that content if you wish. So if you have any questions, I'm always open to chatting further about inspiration and the benefits of music. We also have a wonderful teaching team at Motif Music Studios, and so we love our role in educating and learning alongside our students. So thanks again, and I'll be brainstorming, so if you have ideas of questions you have, I'd love to hear it. We'll see you later.